Ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you?
It's time to flip a coin and find out.
Well, we need to know what we're calling for here.
We're calling it to see who's got the best sports knowledge here on the Coin Flip with Martin Kelly
and Jacob Zimmerman.
Flip it again. And welcome on into the Coin Flip podcast. Jacob Zimmerman, Martin Kelly. We are back once again for another week discussion football in the National Football League. Martino, we had a crazy week 2. We are about to dive into that in one moment as I make sure you can see what's happening here on Discord. But Martin, how are you doing? What are your thoughts on week 2?
It wasn't too bad of a week. It was an interesting week in the sense of scores and who won and who was trailing and whatnot. It was a fun week.
So, Martin, if you've locked in here to the screen share, you can now see what happened in week 2. We got all the results, the closing spread. Once again, keep in reminder of our little key here for correcting picks. A flashback to week 1 where I defeated Martin in our flat-out outright moneyline picks. I went 12-4. Martin went 6-10. And Martin, this week around, you had some speculation about you doing better than me. We tied. We both went 10-6 for the week. I now sit at 22-10 overall. You're at an even 16-16 through 2 weeks. Can't complain about that.
No, I can't complain about that at all.
So, Martin, we'll spend the first portion of our podcast, once again, the opening minutes discussing week 2. Martin, I got 5 underdog picks here, but the real story is going to be some of these close games, some of these overtime games, some of these crazy backhand cover contests we saw in prime time or on the afternoon slate. But, Martin, is there any key game that you want to cover first?
Not really. I wouldn't say a key game. Obviously, there was the injuries. Nick Chubb's out for the season. That game was a mess last night. That offensive line for Cleveland it's not good. The Carolina Panthers game, not to dog on that game, but it was just an average football game. There was a lot of average football games this week. There was a lot of decent games this week as well. It was a fun week too. It was not as hectic as week 1 was, but week 2 kind of slowed down a little bit. It was more of what we thought. It was a good game between Kansas City and Jacksonville. I thought that would be a lot more high flying. That wasn't, but nonetheless, it was a fun week too.
Looking at some of the picks that we both missed here, Martin, we missed the Chiefs pick. We both took the Jags as underdogs. We were betting on Trevor Lawrence himself to pull through, and that was a very low-scoring game. The Chiefs' defense looks, in this moment, they look like the best in the AFC, perhaps. Another pick we both missed, we both had the Lions at home against the Seahawks. They couldn't do it 2 in a row, and as this game was kind of getting closer and closer to kickoff, we record these predictions on a Tuesday, so a lot can happen throughout the week, but that's no excuse for our predictions here on the Coin Flip podcast. Martin, we both missed on the Detroit Lions. They're kind of falling back to 500 after 2 weeks. I still think they'll finish the season well, but the Seahawks, Geno Smith, they came to play. They were no joke in that one.
Absolutely. It was not a joke with that game at all. It was a fun one there. It was high flying. It was back and forth. Geno Smith, Jared Goff put on a great show.
Another standout, of course, from week 2 in the National Football League. Martin, I'm going to mention this. I was feeling pretty confident going into this week about a couple teams in particular, and I put my money where my mouth was with the Giants, with the Rams, and I am forgetting the final team. But the real story is those 2 teams finding a way to chip back. Obviously, the Rams just with the spread. Puka Nacua, though, let's talk about him for a moment, Martin. I got to see this guy front and center, sometimes twice a day, 3 times a day for years in high school football, walking around the classrooms as well. Martin, this guy is as talented as they come, and I find it kind of funny, all the memes that you're seeing, whether it's the actual NFL page posting this guy repeatedly, which is awesome to see, or there are huge media outlets, or other just random pages across social media are posting stuff like, Imagine drafting Jamar Chase over Puka Nakua. And to me, that's hilarious because, it's something that we didn't see coming. And obviously, someone who I played high school ball with, you know, to say that I predicted this to happen, for him to set the rookie reception record through 2 games by a mile, no, I didn't expect that to happen. I think he's got a good system going with McVay. I think a lot of people are starting to see, they're starting to say, "Oh, Cooper Cup, he might not be this, he might not be that." Let's just wait. Let's just wait on all that. Puka's talented in his own right. I wish more of the sports talk shows would actually mention his name instead of just saying, "Oh, he's the rookie wide receiver in the 5th round from BYU." I don't know if they can't pronounce Puka Nakua or what it is, but great start to the year from Puka. It's translating to the team overall. The Rams over 6.5, I think, was their initial over-under throughout the regular season. That's looking not too bad at all. But the Giants, Martin, they were down, what, 21-0?
They were
And I was
down.
I was about ready to remove them from the four quad games that were going on YouTube TV. But Martin, they chipped all the way back. Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley both had excellent fantasy games. They got it done. But even with a win like that, that's about as ugly as a win as you can get.
Yeah, I think they were down officially 28-0 to Arizona at one point in that game. May have been 21-7 or 28-7. Actually, I'll take that back. It was 28-7, like halfway through the third quarter, and then all of a sudden, here comes 24 straight points from the New York Giants that pulled out a win. But at what cost? They lost their best player, and Daniel Jones still looks like a mess, and maybe the Brian Dable magic isn't working, and maybe they have to admit their offensive line is not that good.
So I handed it a little parlay I had placed. Giants -3. I bought that down, ended up pushing. That was a total roller coaster. The Dolphins, were my last leg to a 3-legger, and I think they made a bit of a statement in Belichick. I think Tua Tagovailoa maybe has the argument for the best season so far of any quarterback. And when it comes to the other side of the football, Micah Parsons absolutely terrorized Zach Wilson. I was watching most of that game as well.
Yeah, it was a fun, few games right there. The Jets and the Cowboys would have been better if a certain man didn't tear his Achilles, but then again, the football world is a little better for him to go back into his dark world. Maybe he could stay there for more than 4 days. Tua showing up, it was a fun game. He looked for other receivers. Tyreek was still Tyreek, but that Gonzalez kid for the Patriots showed up and shut him down for a good portion. So Tua had to look for other players, and like I said, man, it was a fun week 2.
And that's what Bill does. He tries to take away the other team's best threat. But, Martin, you mentioned injuries a moment ago. You mentioned Nick Chubb at the start of the podcast. Anybody out there who had Nick Chubb on a fantasy league out there understands the pain that I'll be going forward with the next couple of days. That's a tough loss. Tough loss for the Browns as well. Although I don't, from a team perspective, Martin, if someone were to tell you one player on your team is going to tear their ACL early in the season, pretty much every fan base, almost every one of them would say, I'd rather have it be our running back, because it's proven now that the offensive line, if you watch the Panthers, if you watch some of these crummy franchises, a bad offensive line is a lot worse than a mediocre running game. Anyway, Martin, that's week 2. Any closing final thoughts on week 2?
Yeah, that last statement you made. If you asked any Browns fan, they would have much rather enjoyed watching Deshaun Watson tear his knees apart. A lot of Browns fans love DTR, which is Dorian Thompson Robinson, who they drafted out of UCLA. He looked really good in the preseason. It's the reason why they traded Dobbs to Arizona. He's the backup right now. They probably would have enjoyed more of DTR in the game than Deshaun Watson. Then again, Cleveland just has a bad offensive line. It's not what it was 3-4 years ago when Nick Chubb was running for 1,600 yards. It got Nick Chubb hurt last night, and it cost them the win because T.J. Watt scooped up a fumble and won the game for the Steelers.
Thank you, Minka Fitzpatrick. All right, moving on to week 3, as I am going to try to keep my 6-game pick lead over Martin. Martin, another full slate of 16 matchups. I was mentioning that before we started this podcast, how eventually it's going to get a little bit easier for us. We won't have as many games as the byes start to sprinkle in. Thursday night game, let's start it off with the 49ers, a 10-point favorite at home against the Giants, whose offense has been very poor to start the year. Martin, I'm going to go with San Francisco to flat out win this game regularly, as I expect you will as well, unless we have a massive upset brewing here from Martino on the Coin Flip podcast. The Niners are solid. The Niners are consistent. Brock Purdy, there's a lot of opinions going around about this guy right now, but one thing we know is that in this role he has right now for the 49ers, he's doing a better job than Jimmy Garoppolo. That we know. That we can book that. The talent is there. Brandon Ayuk had a great week 1. Deebo Samuel had a nice week 2. George Kittle, we all know if he stays healthy, he's the fourth option on offense at this point. I mean, Christian McCaffrey's in there as well. If George Kittle's your fourth option on offense, your team is loaded. The defense, we could go on and on about that with the Bosa boy and the rest, the Fred Warner, everyone they have back there. All in all, the Giants. This pick comes down to the Giants and Brian DeBall maybe not having the same impact this year. Maybe Saquon, his injury, the contract talk. It hasn't worked out for the Giants this year. Disgusting game against the Cardinals. The 49ers win this by a blowout.
Yeah, I got the 49ers too. Keep running CMC.
So we will move on to the Colts and the Ravens, as we are going to not forget about our timer here in the coin flip. Ravens 8.5. Favorites against the Colts. Now, Martin, I like what the Colts are doing with not being afraid to run the ball with Anthony Richardson. That's something that I think your Chicago Bears should not be afraid to do with Justin Fields at this point. But I like the fact of recognizing what they have with AR. They just need to use him the correct way. This is not Tom Brady back there. So looking now over to the Ravens. Zay Flowers has been a really nice addition to this young core. He can get it done in the slot. You can even put him outside. I wonder if they'll even put this guy in the backfield. He's that quick and shifty. And considering J.K. Dobbins is down, that might not be a bad idea to just throw him out for some sets. Maybe it's two running back in the shotgun. Maybe it's off of an orbit motion. I don't know. Zay Flowers, getting this guy the ball, I think is a great idea. OBJ is your 2. He's had a slow start. He may round into form, although he's had plenty of time to recover from his injury. If the defense can be the Ravens' defense, this team will have a great season. In this individual matchup, I'd be a fool to pick the Colts.
I agree with you. AR is out for this week due to a concussion. I believe in the Ravens. Lamar Jackson is better than Gardner Minshew.
And that's an interesting note, Martin. I recognize he got that concussion. It was kind of weird because it was on a play where he scored and he celebrated right after. But, those effects can kind of creep in. We've seen delayed knockouts in the UFC. There could be, some delayed concussion effects. And if he is officially ruled out this early into the week, as we're recording on this on a Tuesday, you're likely hearing this on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It looks like Gardner Minshew will step in, although I don't think he did bad. But, Martin, you're picking the Ravens, correct?
Yes, I am.
Moving on to our next matchup here, covering all 16 here on the Coin Flip podcast, restarting the timer. Browns, 3-point favorite against the Titans. Martin, I don't understand why the Browns are favored in this one. I mean, Deshaun Watson's looked terrible. You kind of mentioned earlier that the fans are probably not too happy with how he started things, and considering all that money he's being paid. But for this season, it is what it is. Chubb's gone. That probably won't hurt him that much. I don't know if this defense is very elite. I mean, they have Myles Garrett, but they're probably middle of the pack. What I do know about the Titans is that the Titans can win close games. The Titans can get it done. The Titans don't abandon the run game. Ryan Tannehill, for what it's worth, has had some decent flashes so far to start the year. And all in all, Mike Vrabel's their coach. He's a top 10 coach in the NFL. I'm going Titans.
I am going to go Titans as well.
You care to elaborate on that? Why do you like the Titans, Martin?
The Titans to me feel a little bit more complete. They have the better running game. I agree with that. The Browns don't have their offense up to speed. They do have Peoples Jones. They do have Amari Cooper. They do have David Njoku. So they have people for Deshaun Watson. That offensive line just looks that bad. Vrabel will bring some pressure. Something's going to happen. It depends if Bud Dupree can actually get around an edge and get to Deshaun Watson. I just think the Titans are better offensively, and that's my opinion.
From a fantasy perspective, Amari Cooper is a pretty solid wide receiver number 2, although he kind of sneaked into that game. He wasn't really supposed to play. He kind of got banged up on a Saturday practice. I'm not sure why teams are practicing hard on a Saturday right before an NFL game, but nevertheless, Martin, are you going with the Browns? Do I hear you picking the Browns, or are you picking the Titans?
No, I'm not gonna pick. I'm not gonna pick the Browns. I'm taking the Titans.
So moving on to our fourth matchup here, as me and Martin have been dead even so far, picking the same teams through the 3 matchups. Let's see we probably won't get much of a difference here in week 4, considering what's happening, or week 3 in their 4th matchup, considering what's happened with the Broncos as of late. And if you're a Broncos fan, that has to be probably the most frustrating loss, I would say, from Russell Wilson in his tenure in Denver, and there's been quite a lot of them. You blowing a lead like that against Sam Howell, against the Commanders, against Riverboat Ron Rivera, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. It looks even worse when Sean Payton had some high hopes for this team, and he wasn't afraid to speak on those hopes, and wasn't afraid to kind of bash the prior coaching core that was there before he came in and stepped in. But Russell Wilson's looking like a problem. That 2-point conversion was a penalty, but it wasn't enough to save him. And I don't think the Broncos are going to hang 33 anytime soon again. The Dolphins hang 30 on a consistent basis. We can go all day into how electrifying this offense is. This is one of the only offenses in the league where I think you can consistently get away with throwing these little screen passes because your receivers and your running backs all run 4.4 or faster. Dolphins.
I agree with you. I'm taking the Dolphins in this one. I blame both the Broncos defense and the offense. If you're up 21-3, if you're up 28-3, you're not supposed to be giving up that many points back to the Commanders. I get, Eric Bieniemy and his style of offense can, surprise teams. I wish the Bears would have hired him, but that's here nor there. The Dolphins are just much better offensively, defensively. They have a former Bronco player, so Chubb will enjoy killing Russell Wilson next week. I'm taking the Dolphins.
The Patriots, I expect to throttle the New York Jets in New York. This is the first time that the New England Patriots have started 0-2 since 2001. Martin, I was born in 1999. That's ridiculous to think about it. Even with how consistent the Pats have been, to think that they never even started 0-2 is wild. And to say that they would start 0-3 would just be insane asylum, especially against Zach Wilson. Look, there's film out on Zach Wilson. There's film out on Zach Wilson this year. Now, the Patriots defense is not the Cowboys defense. The Cowboys defense is looking like Baltimore 2000, Chicago 85. It's looking that good, and I think you would even agree with that. The Patriots defense is not that, but I still think they'll hold the Jets under 20. Let's call it 20. And I think the Patriots can squeak out 21 points. That could be one of those games where the spread at -2 really gets a lot of people, and Vegas wins big time. For what it's worth, Mac Jones has the air yards so far this season, but they don't have the big plays. They're going to get their first big play of the year against the Jets at some point. It takes a toll mentally on a defense when they know their offense is hopeless. It really does. It does. Patriots win.
I'm taking the Jets, and I'm taking the Jets only because if I had to pick either the Patriots offense or the Jets offense to put up more points in this game, I'm taking the Patriots offense. Bill O'Brien looks lost. He doesn't know what he's calling. Mac Jones looks worse and worse and worse. I feel bad for him because I don't think he sucks. I just think it's the environment he's around. I think the Jets are a little better defensively. I think they'll find a way to make Mac Jones turn the ball over just like the Eagles did. Give me the Jets.
Moving on, as the Bills are 6.5-point favorites on the road at the Commanders. Now, this is a pretty good line to set, in my opinion. Bills coming off a big win against the Raiders at home, a much needed win. Commanders are 2-0. The Commanders are 2-0. I did not expect that. And to say that they would be 3-0 would be so far a stretch from our regular season win total predictions, over under betting lines from about a month ago we did with James. And I think I said under 6.5 or under 7.5, whatever the line was. It might have been even higher. The Commanders are looking nice though. I picked up the Robinson running back in fantasy. I've got McLaurin as well. I feel good about those two guys. For what it's worth, Sam Howell is 2-0. Can't believe that. And even with the Bills' struggles, I think them being able to bounce back, them being able to still say we're not going to struggle against these bottom of the barrel teams, tells me that the Bills will find a way to handle business on the road in what could be an ugly game. But to say, this pick just comes down to the Commanders in my eyes. I cannot see them being 3-0. If they did, that'd be crazy. They could even cover the spread. But I'm taking Bills outright.
Well, the Bills have already lost to the Jets, and the Jets were bad, and they really should have won that game versus the Jets. Zach Wilson, Josh Allen threw 3 picks, and I'm not sure what he was looking at. They did bounce back against the Raiders. They beat the crap out of them. Picking the Commanders, I don't think it is a bad bet because that offense has shown up. Howell hasn't made too many mistakes. He hasn't put the team in bad situations. They're at home. It's a coin flip toss to me. I throw out the betting odd number. It doesn't really matter in this situation. I am going to go Buffalo just because they're the better team. They should win this game. The Bills should win it, but I wouldn't be actually surprised if the Commanders won.
So a classic 50-50, could go either way contest in Martin Kelly's eyes. Going on as we are cruising through our Week 3 NFL predictions, outright/money line, as I try to keep my season lead on Martin here in the Coin Flip podcast. The Falcons, NFC South meets NFC North, so the Birds will take a trip up to Detroit to take on the Lions. Lions -3. I think this is where the Lions bounce back. Overtime losses are tough. I think Dan Campbell will have them fierce, hungry, and ready to turn around. Jared Goff, I like the start he's been off to so far this season. He's been really a nice slot in there for, a quarterback between the 8 to 12 range in the NFL right now as far as rankings, and he's certainly playing like it. The Lions' defense looked good in Week 1, didn't look so good in Week 2, but the Falcons, they have Desmond Ridder as their quarterback. And I've said this over the last couple of weeks. I've said this consistently. I do not believe in a Desmond Ridder-led team, and it's not like they have any better backup quarterback right now on the roster. Bijan Robinson, he's amazing. He's great. Algier is underrated as the second RB on that team. They can't find a way to get this ball to Kyle Pitts to save their life, and until they do, I'm going to pick them to lose just about every week. I don't care how good their record looks. I'm taking the Lions.
So the Lions at home, they already showed us that they can't win at home to begin the season because they lost to Seattle in a game they probably should have won. They won their first game, I believe it was on the road at Kansas City, so they can beat a good team and they lose to an average team. So what do they do against a slightly above average team in the Falcons and the fact that they just don't have a quarterback? I'm taking the Lions just because if I had a pair of quarterbacks, Goff versus Ritter, I'm taking Goff in this one. Detroit wins this one.
And see, years back, you could say, "Oh, that's a casual take, just picking the best quarterback." But we literally have the national media. We have Colin Cowherd doing his predictions basically sheerly off of who the better quarterback is. And at this point in 2023, that's not even that bad of a way to predict games in the NFL. Me and Martin both rolling with the Lions. Let's see what we do here with the Packers, however, who are listed as a 2-point favorite, 3 minutes back on the clock here in the CFP. Pack -2 at home against the Saints. That's kind of telling you this one could go either way. I was having conversations with friends and family throughout that Panthers game on Monday night that I'm sure that you were peeking at as well, Martin, which is one of the ugliest primetime games offensively of recent memory. The Saints' defense is top 10. We know the Packers have some weapons on defense as well. Jordan Love has had some questionable plays. He's also had some nice plays through week 2. We've kind of seen the full spectrum already with Jordan Love. I mean, have you ever seen a quarterback fall down on a false start before a QB sneak? I've never seen that, Martin. But to say what he did in week 1 wasn't impressive would be a lie as well. Derek Carr, however, is looking really rough. Back to the conversations I was having with the Panthers and the Saints. I was saying, Bryce Young, he doesn't look good. He doesn't look good at all out there. I would be lying to say he looked good or to try to make a ton of excuses for what he did on Monday night. But Derek Carr was just as bad. He really was. Now, you can adjust to an offense. Derek Carr had some games like this when he was in Las Vegas, California. But the Saints have a good defense, and that's ultimately why I'm going to pick them to get it done. I think Jordan Love will have some youthful quarterback struggles against an elite defense. And for what it's worth, the Saints have done just enough to get it done back-to-back weeks with some ugly, low-scoring wins. And I think they're going to do it again.
There are times where I love you to death and you are my best friend. And there are times where I just head scratch myself and wonder why did you put me in this corner when you could have just taken the other route. And this is one of those moments. Do I pick the Saints because I hate the Packers? Or do I go against every being inside of me that wishes they would just go away and go be part of Canada and forget about the state of Wisconsin? Darn you, Jacob. Seriously, in all love and seriousness, I am going to take the team from the north. I'm taking the Packers.
Wow. As ruthless as that just sounded, to back up your claim a little bit, Martin, Jordan Love has 6 touchdowns. As our timer hit here, we'll go just a couple seconds over. Jordan Love has 6 touchdowns, no picks on the year, but he's thrown for well less than 100 yards than even Derek Carr has so far. So Martin taking the arch rival, the Green Bay Packers, to beat the Saints. Let's refresh that timer here and move on to the next matchup. About halfway through, we'll try to move it a little bit faster pace, especially with a matchup like this. Jags and Texans. CJ Stroud look nice. I think it's more of the Colts defense being really poor. The Jaguars at home, 9.5. I think they could even pass that line. They're going to want some revenge, and things are going to feel a lot easier going against the Texans defense compared to the Chiefs defense, which is looking legit. Calvin Ridley on 8 targets had 2 catches. That's going to flip. Calvin Ridley's going to go for at least 6 catches, probably $100 in the air. Jags easy.
To finish up the morning games here with this last one, I'm taking the Jags as well. I love CJ Stroud. He's looked good. They just don't have everything there, but Pierce, Dell, all the offense, Mitchie, everything is looking like it should. Just give that man a defense. Seriously, give CJ Stroud a defense, and I think he can win games, but I still pick the Jags.
Vikings-Chargers, I think, is the closest matchup of the week, and this is going to be very pivotal for both of these teams because, Martin, they're both 0-2. To think that if you told me before the season that the Chargers or the Vikings, one of them would be 0-3 to start the year, I'd be like, really? That's surprising. And it's guaranteed to happen with one of these teams. I think if the Vikings go 0-3, their season is a wash. I don't think they can recover from 0-3, even if the NFC is not as strong, even if you can argue that some of these other teams in the division aren't quite where they need to be yet. I see a world where the Chargers could bounce back, and part of me almost thinks that there could be some internal thoughts in the Chargers organization, and I've even thought this. Well, one of my buddies is a Chargers fan, Keaton, and I wonder if he thinks this too. How it might serve the Chargers better long term, or even throughout the rest of the season, to actually lose this game, maybe lose the next one, and have Staley get fired. That's maybe what it takes. Because at this point, he's holding that squad back. And in a pick'em contest, Martin, it's literally even. It's an even contest, the spread I'm looking at on ESPN. The ones we used here are Vikings minus 1.5, although it's gonna change throughout the week. Last week we did our predictions with the spread there. The spreads all changed. Most of them changed a little bit by Sunday, from Tuesday to Sunday. I think the Vikings are going to find a way to get this one done. Even with a knock on, the Vikings aren't going to win close games this year because they won a ton of close games last year. Kirk Cousins had a bounce back week. I think he continues that. The Chargers defense is looking putrid. And even if, Herbert throws for 300, it seems to be an empty 300 calories in Los Angeles' standard. I'm going to pick the Vikings in a close one.
I'm gonna take the Chargers. I'm gonna go on it. I'm gonna go on a whim here. I trust Justin Herbert to find some way to beat Kirk Cousins. Both of these defenses are. The Chargers defense is better. The Vikings defense is terrible. The Vikings running game is not there. Justin Jefferson's about ready to just completely hurt Kirk Cousins every single week. As much as I don't want to trust Staley, I trust Staley just a little bit more than whatever the coach is for Minnesota. I don't know who he is. Taking the Chargers.
Speaking of 0-3 that I mentioned as we just beat the buzzer there on that segment, Panthers at Seahawks. I mentioned 0-3, and that's probably what it's going to be for Carolina. They're underdogs. The line is probably going to increase. It's 5.5 on a Tuesday. I guarantee you it's going to be at least 6.5, maybe even 7 by the time Sunday rolls around. Martin, Bryce Young has had his struggles. He really has to start the season. But to say that this is like unexpected, or he's playing even below what we thought was going to happen, I don't know if I can say that. The Panthers' offense is making a real case for the worst offensive line in football. Now, Martin, it's really disappointing to see a left tackle, the premier security position in all of football. And we drafted Ike Mekwonu out of NC State, an in-state kid, to play for the Panthers. We drafted him high in the first round a couple years back. And, he had a rough rookie season. He's had his bumps and bruises there. There's been some good reports, some bad reports coming out about this guy. But there was 2 plays in the Panthers game against the Saints on Monday Night Football that I just shook my head and lost some hope with this team a little bit. One of them was a simple run play to the left, and it got blown up so fast that I couldn't even tell you where the run was supposed to go. Aquanu just got flat out beat on a 1-to-1 block on the D end. A couple minutes later, the Panthers run 5 wide. The Saints rush 3. And while this play's not necessarily on Aquanu, they made Bryce Young scramble all over the field rushing 3 against 5. I'm not picking the Panthers to win this game. Not yet.
Well, you know where I'm going with this one. I'm taking the Seattle Seahawks in this one. I believe in Geno Smith. I think they'll bounce back. You can talk about the offensive line, but the one key that tells me I don't trust the Panthers is when your starting quarterback lines up behind the left guard and doesn't realize that he has to line up behind the center, and the running back needs to shove him to the spot to get the ball from the center. Tells me the Panthers don't know what they're doing. Bryce Young is lost. He's getting beat up. Seattle in this one.
Even Tom Brady can make some simple mistakes like that, however. But moving on to our fourth to last contest of week 3 here on the Coin Flip Podcast. Cowboys, massive favorites, deservedly so. This is one of the biggest spreads you're going to see from a favorite away team, 12.5 in Arizona. I think the Cardinals will find a way to keep this one relatively close at points in the game. But yeah, the Cowboys are going to win this one. This is Micah Parsons having another little kid to scare at the haunted house. Cowboys win.
You know, Michael Parsons is a great story considering he had no collegiate sacks at all when he was Penn State. He was more of a coverage linebacker. They used him on some blitzes, but he never got a sack in college. To see him just basically come off the edge like Khalil Mack and kill guys and get sacks is really impressive. He's in the running for DPOY. If Aaron Donald gets hurt, then he's the winner. If Aaron Donald doesn't get hurt, I pick Aaron Donald every single year. The Cardinals are a fun story, but the state of Arizona is more of a Cowboys fan base than the Cardinals fan base, so it'll be a lot more Cowboys fans there. I'm taking Dallas.
So Martino and I both rolling with the boys as we move to our last 4 matchups. Chiefs and Bears. Martin and I will give you most of this segment here as I restart the timer. But I'm going to roll with the Chiefs. I think they're going to get a nice, secure win. I think they've bounced back after a tough week 1. I think there has been a lot of chit-chat about the receivers on this team, but like it or not, they find a way to get it done. Marquez Valdez-Scantling has been a nice, solid receiver on this team. For what it's worth, you can kind of maybe book one of Sky Moore or Kadarius Toney to have a decent game, I think, going forward. One of those two will have. And I think Travis Kelce is going to reestablish himself as perhaps the best non-quarterback on the offensive side of the football in all of the National Football League. So this is an easy one for me, Chiefs.
You know where I'm going with this. I don't care what happens every week. I'm just waiting for Matt Eberflus and Chris Getsy, Luke Getsy, I think is his name. I forget which one it is. And for this entire coaching staff to get fired this offseason, Justin Fields is not the problem. Everyone keeps blaming Justin. They keep trying to make him into something that he's not. They keep getting him killed. It's going to be sad when he moves on because he's not going to sign an extension. The Bears won't give him an extension. I'll enjoy this season and next season to watch him play in Chicago. They won't pick up the 5th option. They're going to let him go. I knew it from the second they drafted him that that was going to happen. I hope he goes to a better team soon in the near future, but I'm picking the Bears no matter what. They'll find a way to win. I don't trust Matt Nagy to call a good offensive game for Kansas City. Give me the Bears.
Martin, while I think that there is a lot of dysfunction going on in Chicago that
It's not
exists
Justin Fields' fault. You have
beyond,
no answer to that. It's not Justin
it
Fields'
is
fault.
totally on. Justin Fields is not going to get another starting opportunity in the NFL. He's just not.
What are you
There's
talking
so much
about?
film. There's so many highlights of this season already. Plenty of time in
Oh
the
my
pocket.
God. This is like a
Wide
40-minute
receivers
conversation
open
we
on
need to have
every
off air.
play. Martin, it's going to continue to prove throughout the season that Martin, I agree. The Bears are not a good team overall, but Justin Fields is not lifting this team up at all. They need to start running with this guy more than Lamar even ever did. Just run the ball with Justin Fields, and he will
You're not
be a
watching the
solid
games. You're
player.
just watching
I am
highlights. I
watching.
know
I
it.
am watching. Film is getting posted all over social media of Justin Fields having four wide
You saw the
receivers
one
open
play where he
and
didn't
taking
throw it
sacks.
to Roscoe in the end zone. That was the only play you saw. Other than that, you didn't watch any other plays.
I guess I don't. I guess I don't have to. The stats speak for themselves. Martin, you're taking the Bears in a massive upset, and I'm taking the Chiefs. Moving on now to the Raiders at home against the Steelers. This is a tough one. The Steelers have been disappointing to start the season. Every fan in Pittsburgh will scream that to you. And I think the Raiders have looked a little bit better than expected. Raiders are at home. Devontae Adams is still there. If they can ever find a way to get the ball to Hunter Renfrow, I like the Raiders sneakily. I think their run game has been pretty solid over the years. Jimmy Garoppolo has not waved the white flag yet, but he has thrown 3 picks. This is tough. This is a tough one. George Pickens flashed well on Monday night. Kenny Pickett's also thrown 3 picks so far this season. Martin, I'm having a tough time deciding who I want to go with this one, and because I'm having such a tough time, I'm just going to take the home team. I'm going to take the Raiders.
I'm going to take the Steelers in this one. Defensively, they showed me something last night. They can hold, they can hold their own against that. They just need this offense to get better. And honestly, I don't understand why they keep trying to do a bunch of weird things. Matt Canada doesn't. I don't know if he wants to actually coach his team or not. I'm picking the Steelers just because as long as Pickett can get to Pickens or to Johnson, I don't think the Las Vegas Raiders defense can hold up, and that's just what it is. I'm taking the Steelers.
The Bucs and the Eagles. I think Baker Mayfield's been a nice story to start the season, and Baker Mayfield's kind of the number one proof in the NFL right now that, and him and Geno Smith, I think, are the number 1 and 2 examples of quarterbacks deserve a legitimate shot on a second team because you don't necessarily know how they're going to play out and how certain franchises are going to look 3 years removed. Situation you can look back to last year already and say Baker Mayfield getting 7 wins, the role he played with the Panthers he's going to look, that performance is going to look better now than it did during the season. Even with that, I think the Eagles, who do have some question marks, are going to solve some of those question marks that they have in this game. I think this is a great opportunity for Jalen Hurts to have one of those performances that says, hey, don't forget about me in the MVP race. Jalen Hurts probably goes for another rushing touchdown. This is the week to get A.J. Brown his confidence back. This is the week to force feed him. And even with Baker Mayfield playing great, I don't think he's going to replicate this success all season. There's no way the Buccaneers are winning this game against the Eagles.
I agree with you on that. I'm taking the Eagles as well. I'm not understanding what Philadelphia is doing. They're not unleashing Jalen Hurts. I know he's not the most efficient passer in the sense that he's not Patrick Mahomes and throw for 50, touchdowns and 5,000 yards. But when you have track speed runners like Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, dude, just throw the ball 30 yards down the field. They'll find a way to catch it. I'm not sure why they don't open up the offense a little bit. I think they should. I think passing should be something they should do a little more than rushing, but nonetheless, I'm not the coaching staff. Nonetheless, I'm still taking the Eagles. Baker's been a great story, but the Bucks have played two bad teams. They're not playing a bad team this week. They're playing the Eagles. I got Eagles.
This is a must-win for Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals, Martino. 2.5-point favorites at home against the Rams. That's an interesting spread. It's saying that, people are starting to lose some confidence in Joe Burrow and the Bengals. I'm not quite going to go there. There's going to be a nice rematch of the Super Bowl we had not too long ago. So that will be pleasing for what that is worth. But even with the Rams playing well, hanging close in a lot of these games to start the season, Cooper Kupp is out. Puka Nacua is playing great. I think Puka's going to go out there and continue his success. But I'm banking on the fact that Joe Burrow is going to finally recognize it's football time again. That's just what I'm going to bank on. Bengals.
To me, I think the Bengals are lying about something, and I think it's about Joe Burrow's injury. I still think he's hurt. He has not looked good at all. He doesn't look like what he looked like last year. Their offensive line is still a question mark, even after all the money they spent on Orlando Brown Jr. this offseason. Joe Burrow's still hurt in my eyes. The Rams have found something. I don't know where it came from. They're efficient on offense. Williams, Puka, Stafford, this offensive line, this defense is still a little alive. I'm taking the Rams. I'm rolling with the Rams in this one because if the efficiency of the Rams can continue and Aaron Donald can just be just in the face of Joe Burrow, they're not going to have a good night. I think Joe Burrow is still hurt, and I think they rushed him back from his injury, and I don't think he's 100% healthy, so that's costing them games. They should have beat the Browns. They should have beat the Ravens, but they're going to be 0-3 after this week after they lose to the Rams.
This is the Coin Flip Podcast. Week 3 in the NFL, our predictions, our money line, outright predictions are in the books on paper on Google Sheets. We will check back in once again next week to give our predictions for week 4 and also review these picks on how they did. But Martin, to kind of check back in once again, Martin, we both went 10-6 last week. Let's continue that success. Let's continue the double-digit wins. Let's make that into a streak for you, as it's a small streak for me. But this is the Coin Flip Podcast where, two guys can agree on a lot of stuff, disagree on some stuff, and heavily disagree on other things, but still come back each and every week. Martin, another fun week in the books. You had some great points, and I'm excited to see how our opinions turn out on Sunday.
It's going to be a fun week. We'll see which one of us is upset, and we'll see which one of us is excited.
That is the Coin Flip Podcast. Every Wednesday, predictions and reactions coming your way. Don't forget, like, subscribe, give us a comment, send this to all your buddies. Maybe troll your friends as well if we pick against them. And that's going to do it for me, Jacob Zimmerman. Martin Kelly, any last final words?
Nope. Just have a good week and peace.